So I guess I'm gonna just quickly welcome everybody, and then you take it from here. Okay? So
okay.
All right, it's 6 o'clock, and I think the number of participants is really rising quickly, which is very encouraging. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second lecture of the lecture series at Galveston College, entitled, of course, we have diversity, inclusion, and empowerment. And it's our great pleasure to welcome Joe Aragaon, who has really graciously agreed to present. Thank you very much. And it's what you already heard. It's going to be a fascinating lecture, and I'm sure there's going to be more people joining in. So again, the title is Bridging Two Worlds, and of course it's really fascinating to hear about Native American culture, and Joe Aragaon has been outstanding, and he served as first lieutenant governor of Acoma Nation, and that's a very wonderful accomplishment. And so let me just go ahead and give it again. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us, and please all the we can ask questions and we let you know some details. And so go ahead, Michael, if you want to take it from here.
Well, sure. Thank you, Lemus. I'm Michael Burberg, English and humanities instructor. And I'll buy just a little bit of time because we do still have people checking in. But I first learned of Acoma Pueblo in college back in 1977, and it is the oldest continuously inhabited city in North America, going back almost 1,000 years. So that's about 400 years before Columbus. In the first week of January in 1978, I found myself and two friends driving through New Mexico. I saw a sign for Acoma, and I told my friends, take that exit. So we drove 8 miles off the highway and then 8 more across gravel and dirt road. And it was not tourist season, yet we were made to feel most welcome when we arrived at the reservation of Acoma Pueblo. There are people who take pride in being a people of peace, which I really enjoyed. And yet it seems so far out of nowhere that it would take a long time to get anywhere from there. I mean, it is out in the middle of the desert. But Acoma Pueblo was one of 375 tribes recognized and given nation status by the U.S. government. And in a discussion with Joe yesterday, we came to an insight. And that is that, in a sense, people don't care about what they don't know about. So one of the values of college and lecture series such as this is learning about others, and through that awareness, learning to care. So let me tell you a quick bit about Joe. He has degrees from mathematics and physics, and then a master's in secondary education and certification. He spent time growing up on the reservation. He has returned and has been part of the Pueblo of Acoma Board of Education. He has worked with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory Mars Exploration Rover Mission, the Athena Student Intern Program out in Pasadena, California. And he has been involved with the National Science Foundation Young Scholars Program and Early Alert Initiative Program. And as Lemus mentioned, he has served as the first lieutenant governor as part of the Pueblo of Acoma tribe. And so anyway, one of the things we see is that Joe is from somewhere. And this awareness of somewhere is what education should be for all of us, as it was for me those many years ago. So as I was once made to feel welcome in Acoma, I would like for us to please welcome Joe Aragaon.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you giving the opportunity for me to share a little bit of my culture and some of my knowledge about growing up here on the Acoma Reservation. first I'd like to say in Karis, which is our language, Uazi, kaitawa haupatu estrayashap. I said, how is everybody doing this evening? Washindame, ia aishtiwa, shuni kyamihano, yaka washt. I told you my name in Acoma is Hia'ai, and I belong to the Zuni Eagle people, and my father is from the Yellow Corn clan. I come from a place called Acoma. So that's my introduction using our Karis language. I know that the presentation I want to give is going to be at least talking a little bit about my journey leaving the reservation here in New Mexico, in northwestern New Mexico, and trying to find my way to I guess this point tonight where I'm at now. When I was young, my parents thought that maybe that was the way that we were going to survive as a tribe and as a person, as a family, was for us to all learn about being a little bit more, I guess, non-Indian, learning a little bit more things that were out there that were not Acoma things. So they encouraged us to do those kinds of things, to go out and seek a way of life that was a little bit different than how we were raised. So I'd like to just start out with that. Here in New Mexico, there's about 22 different tribes. 19 of them are Pueblo. And of course, we have the largest tribe, part of our state, the Navajo tribe, and we have two Apache tribes, Jicarilla and Mescalero Apache tribes. We do have some Southern Ute coming down from Colorado, but out of all those tribes, most of us in the state of New Mexico are what they call Pueblo. And maybe that's where I get my Spanish name. My Spanish name is Joe Aragaon, and I know that sometimes some of those people that are Spanish descent, they say, well, Joe, you're mispronouncing your last name. You're supposed to say it Aragon. And I said, well, that was given to us by the Spanish way back in the 1500s. So we chose to say it our way. And in my introduction, I told you my name, Hia'ai. That's my Acoma name. It's actually a name of a road that our spirits take that's south of our Pueblo. And then we don't really have last names, we have family names. The Eagle clan and then the Yellow Corn clan. That's how we identify ourselves. But anyway, Mike just mentioned that we see ourselves as one of the oldest continually inhabited communities in the United States. Us, the Pueblo of Hopi in Arizona, and then up north, another Pueblo of Taos. Everybody kind of knows Taos. We all argue for that title, the oldest continually inhabited village in North America. We've been living on top of the mesa in Albuquerque for at least two millennia. So that's what we know. Our oral history tells us as we wandered, came out of the opening in the ground, that in our wandering, we ended up here so far. Other Acoma people have gone and populated other parts of the world, but this is where we ended up at. And the name of the tribe is really the name of the place. It's not really a name of anything that's a characteristic of the place, maybe more than anything else. It's a place prepared. Aku means a place prepared. So according to our spirits, we came to a place that was prepared for us. And so this is where we stayed. And we continue to still stay here. What I want to start out is by telling you folks about a little bit about my journey, going at least to leave Acoma. I remember me and a friend of mine were trying to leave the school and go find a place that we could go to college at. Now, I'm sure that maybe a lot of your students there in Galveston College had some of that same kind of idea on where to go. And each probably one of you who've gotten degrees kind of had some reason to go where you went to school. But me and a friend of mine, we got a map of the United States. And this is in 1970, right at the end of the, kind of near the end of the Civil Rights Movement, the beginning of the American Indian Movement in 1970, 71. And we looked at the map of the United States and said, well, where shall we go to school? We didn't want to hang around home, you know, we wanted to go away to school. And we figured that was the best way that we could learn about the world. And I know I was leaving to go to college for 3 different reasons. They might not sound all that grandiose, but one of them was to save the world. I wanted to go out and save the world. Seeing all the news that was going on, and stuff was happening in colleges. Kids were getting shot for what they believed in and how they thought things should be. And I said I should save the world, at least be part of that somehow. The other thing was save my people. I mean, we weren't doing that well then, and we still have a lot to do now. But I figured if I could save the world, save my people, those are 2 good things to do. The third one, well, I wanted to play football. I wanted to play college football. I thought I was a pretty good football player, but we'll see later on that didn't happen the way I thought it was going to happen. So in this map of the United States, me and a friend of mine, we looked at it. We said, well, do you want to go to someplace far away? Maybe we could go to, let's say, New England. Oh, no, we don't want to go there. There's too many people. And we had been recruited by several colleges and universities there at our small high school there on the Laguna Reservation, which is a neighboring reservation to us. And some of them were Ivy League schools, and they wanted us to go. But we kind of figured that they were just looking for to fill out their ranks of minority people. And said, well, you want to kind of be like I guess a token? We had thought. I said, no, that's not us. Let's find someplace else. We thought about maybe the West Coast, you know, California. Hey, there you go, a lot of sunshine, a lot of beaches, and we thought about that for a while. I said, well, you know, are there a lot of Native Americans there? I said, well, yeah, they are. We had thought about them for a while. Well, they all live in huts. No, they don't live like we do in pueblos and in rock houses or adobe houses. Well, why do they all live in huts? Well, because all the earthquakes going on over there. So we figured, no, not California. No, not earthquakes. Up in the northwest, how about there? Nah, rain's too much. We live here in the high desert, and all we do is pray for rain. We wouldn't know what to do up there and what to pray for. So we know how to pray for rain, and we wouldn't want to go up there and pray for rain. Well, how about in the Midwest? Oh man, that's American Indian Movement country, you know. They'll think we're aiming, we might get shot. Well, how about in the South? Well, you know, we're kind of dark skinned. You know, they might think that we're part of the Civil Rights Movement, and we'll still get shot. So where shall we go? Well, that kind of left 2 places sticking out, really. And one of them was Hawaii, but we didn't really think about that because we didn't know how to swim. So that was off the list. How about Alaska? Oh yeah, right. We have too much cold weather here in New Mexico. We don't want to be up there in Alaska. So kind of left Florida out. So that was where we decided to go, Florida. Nice and warm. It's still part of the United States. We can walk home if we have to. And so that's where we applied to. And my friend, his ACT scores to get into college weren't that good. So during the summer when we were working, he got denied admission to the school that we chose. And I got in. And my ACT scores were pretty good. I spent a lot of time trying to do a lot of preparation to try and go somewhere. And so that's where I went. University of Florida, right there on the Hillsborough River, right at the Tampa Bay area. And that's where I went to school at. But anyway, from there, I learned a lot about who I was. I don't think they had too many Native American people at this university. When I first got there, and I had applied for financial aid and gotten financial aid, and it was a Native American grant. They thought I was there by mistake. The financial aid officer that I met with said, are you sure you want to come here? Do you know that we're a university? I said, yes, I do. Do you know that we're not a trade school? I said, yes, I do. And then he explained to me, so, well, most of the Native Americans that we had come into our school were here by mistake. They were supposed to be going to a trade school to learn some sort of trade. And if you're willing to, if you know that you're coming to this university, then we'll accept you. And we'll try and help you out as much as we can. Which turned out to be pretty good. They did help me. They helped me find additional funding so I could stay there and help me do other things. But of course, playing football was another issue when I first got there. They thought I was Samoan. There was maybe another Native American, one other person there at the University of Tampa, and she was from Arizona. And we met up and we talked about how homesick we were for being back in the desert, being stuck there and all that humidity of Florida. But yeah, I learned a lot of stuff there. And I learned a lot about myself. I didn't realize how bad some of the stereotypes were going to be sometimes, because they had a lot of questions for me once they found out that I was Native American and they found out that I wasn't Samoan. Questions like, well, do you guys still live in teepees? And I said, well, not really. There's a lot of Native people out there, and a lot of them really don't all live in teepees. We live in a home, a house, pretty sturdy house made of mud and rock, and so I had to deal with a lot of questions like that. So I had to come up with some of my own answers sometimes to some of those. So sometimes if they ask, do you live in teepees? I would ask back, do you guys still travel in covered wagons? Well, if you don't do that, then we don't all live in teepees. And so I had to learn a lot about maybe misconceptions that people had about Native people. That was one of the things that kind of helped me out. I wasn't able to handle at least some of the weather that they had there in Florida, but I tried real hard to fit in. I needed to get a major, and they had arena style registration. So when I went to the registration, there was three young people sitting at a table, and they asked me, "What college do you want to go to?" And I said, "Well, University of Tampa. That's why I'm here." No. This is the university. What college do you want to be in? And I thought about it for a while, and I said, "Well, the University of Tampa. That's why I'm here." No. Inside the university, we have different colleges. So there's a College of Fine Arts, College of Sciences, College of this and that. And I thought for a while, and I said, "Well, what's the hardest thing you got?" And they laughed and they looked at each other and they said, "Well, our science department's kind of hard." And I said, "Well, our math departments are hard too." Well, one of the girls there said, "I had a physics class, and man, that kicked my butt." And they said, "Yeah, physics is tough. Physics is the hardest thing we have, and it's in the College of Science." And I said, "Okay, sign me up." So they signed me up. So I went to the College of Sciences, and my major turned out to be physics. And I struggled at that subject. But I learned to enjoy it. I learned that it made me understand things. And a lot of the professors there, much like maybe the professors there at Galveston, are able to help the students out that they know really want to learn that information. And so I stuck with the physics and did as many physics classes that I could down there and mathematics classes, but it still wasn't home. And there wasn't people like me down there. and I struggled a lot to try and figure out who I was, what I was, and I wrote a friend of mine. And when I came back for summertime, I saw my friend of mine, the one that was supposed to come with me, and he had been going to a different university, and one that accepted him. And he told me about him, and he said, you should come back. You should come back to New Mexico. If you really don't like being in Florida and you don't really feel any kind of connection to some of the folks there, maybe you should come back this way. So he was real influential on trying to get me to come back to the university. But during that time, I learned a lot, like I said, about myself. I remember flying into Florida one time and going to the airport there. I think it was somewhere in Texas, there in Dallas Fort Worth area, where I was had to change a plane. And there was a rancher there, a guy with a cowboy hat, kind of looked a little bit like Mike, and he was there with another gentleman with a suit on. And for whatever reason, they were there, but they started looking at me, and I was kind of dressed just a little bit like the way I am now. And they came over and they asked me, "Are you a Native American?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And they said, the guy that looked like he was maybe a rancher, he said, "Well, we're just admiring all your turquoise and stuff. I had my bling on and stuff, and I was looking the part." And he goes, "Yeah," and the guy in the suit said, "Yeah, it's real nice, and maybe want to pick up some pieces sometime while I'm here in the Southwest, I guess." I said, "Well, Texas might be kind of hard to find some other places, but if you went to Arizona, New Mexico, you might find a lot of people selling jewelry like this." And then the rancher tells him, he goes, "You know what? If you had maybe a jug of whiskey, this Indian guy might trade you for it." And I said, "I'm sorry, I don't do that." But those kind of things kind of made me open my eyes a little bit and say, maybe the people out here along these ways that I've been at now kind of need a little help trying to understand some of Native America. And so I started to try and find out more about Native America, not only just about myself and about Acoma, because I kept getting a lot of these questions from people about what Native America was about. Who are you? Who are we? Are you the same kind of Indians that are in the John Wayne movies? Are you the same kind of Indians that we see in the West Coast? Are you the same kind? And trying to explain to them that no, we're a very diverse group of people, both in our language and the way we live, in our oral traditions, our history, our culture, and to the most part, some of our religion. It's a little different than just being somebody that lives in a teepee, rides a horse, and hunts buffalo. I said we're a little different than a lot of that. So it kind of helped me understand a little bit about trying to explain to people about who I was, what I was about. So I tried to learn as much as I could about Native America. When Europeans first came to the United States, we were not recognized as really being part of America. It wasn't until 1924 where Congress passed a Native American Citizenship Act that we became citizens in 1924. Before that time, we were parts of just combatants, and our role was was being taken care of by the United States in the Department of War. And during those times, the 1800s, when we had a lot of Native American wars with the United States, those were the times that the federal government had at least decided to try and take care of the Native American people. And most of the time, it was to try and get rid of them. But in 1924, we finally got citizenship. And the funny thing about that was a lot of Native people fought like in World War I. And they were doing that kind of against the law. Clear past that time, even past the time that we were citizens, it was against the law for us to even have guns. bear arms. We weren't allowed to do any of that. I'll tell you a little bit about the history about New Mexico and Acoma a little bit later here. But then finally, it didn't happen until maybe 1924. And then finally, we were kind of recognized as a part of being citizens, but we still didn't have certain rights. The right to our own religion, the right to our voting, certain rights. It wasn't until about the 1930s, I think 1934, where Reorganization Act was passed again by Congress, giving the tribes the right to establish their own government. And our government here at Acoma is not a democracy. It's a theocracy. It's a traditional form of government. We don't have a vote. We don't even have a written constitution. Our oral traditions dictate to us how we run our government. In fact, things like voting didn't happen for a long time. It wasn't until 1965 that we actually got to vote for certain positions. In 1965, after World War II, it was a man from Acoma Pueblo, just south of Albuquerque, that brought suit against the state of New Mexico because he had served in the war, he had fought for America, and yet he wasn't given the right to vote. So he sued the state of New Mexico for the right to vote. And this happened in the 1960s. In fact, even I couldn't vote for a county commissioner until 1966 because I didn't own land in the county, and they had a requirement that your county commissioner should be voted upon by people who own property in the county. So things were slow. Things were very slow. To be self-determined, to decide a lot more things for ourselves didn't happen until the 1970s, 1975. Self-Determination Act came, and we were able to do and ask for certain things to govern ourselves the way that we saw fit, and to decide for ourselves who was Acoma, who belonged to your tribe, and how we should govern those people. In fact, even religious freedom, which we thought we could get as being citizens, didn't happen until about 1978 when Senator Inouye from Hawaii decided to try and give us more religious freedom. And that pertained to a lot of the Native American religions, and especially the Native American church, which is a peyote cult church, that they were getting arrested and being thrown in jail for practicing the way they thought they should. And then back at now coming up to about 1990, the Repatriation Act that says now that we can reclaim a lot of the artifacts and a lot of the deceased people of our tribes and reinter them the way we see fit. So all of these things that have been happening very slow for Acoma, for Native America. Here in New Mexico, we've been under 3 different governments. We've lived under the Mexican rule. We've lived under the Spanish rule. Spanish rule first, I guess, then the Mexican rule next, and then now we're trying to survive democracy and still kind of maintain our self-awareness and our identity. So now that's where we're at right now as Acoma people. There's still a lot of ideas that are still foreign to people. During my time in college, I try and help a lot of other people become aware of Native American culture a little bit, and try and talk to Native American students in college about trying to be able to discuss their Indianness with other people. And I tell them there's a lot of stereotypes out there that you need to kind of be aware of. I was at a university, and I was in the post office, and this one in eastern New Mexico. And 2 little kids were playing outside, and they saw me walking up and walking into the post office. And I was going to buy some stamps and mail off some mail. Well, 2 little boys followed me into the post office, and they were non-Indian kids, and they stood there against the wall and were staring at me, talking to each other, whispering to each other. And then finally, one of the kids asked me, he goes, "Are you a real Indian?" And I said, "Well, my mom was Indian, and well, my dad was Indian, so I guess that makes me Indian. So yeah, I'm a real Indian." And then they go, "Well, can you come home with us?" And I said, "Come home with you? Why?" He said, "Well, my dad's a cowboy. I mean, he's a cowboy. He raises his cattle and stuff, and I want my dad to kill you." And I said, "Why?" "Well, cowboys kill Indians. So, if you're a real Indian, then you can come home and dad can kill you." And I said, "I don't think I want to go home with you guys." So these kind of things even still happen sometimes with little kids who don't know stuff, I guess maybe. But we're all kind of to blame for that. We all still see the same kind of stereotypical images that we see on TV or we hear about, and that doesn't change a whole bunch unless it comes through like education and things like that people are aware of, that there's a lot of differences between a lot of the people. And so things like that happen to people that are, I guess, stereotypes. Sometimes they ask, are you guys in charge of your people as men folk? And I said, well, you're asking kind of like a chauvinistic question, I guess. Well, yeah, but all your chiefs are men, and your men folk take care of all the people and the women folk. And I said, oh no, listen, Acoma, as well as most of the cultures that are Native America in America, are matrilineal. That means the ladies have more power than the men do. And I said, if you and your wife are walking across a desert, would you want your wife to go first? Or would you go first to make sure it's safe for her to go through? So that's why if I was walking through the desert with my wife and my family would walk behind me, not in front of me. So I could be able to protect them that way. And like I said, their concepts sometimes, because they don't really understand some of the way that a lot of the cultures are for Native America, we're mostly matrilineal. The ladies and the lady spirits, our mother natures, are what that implies. Mothers, not father natures. And we try and still uphold that idea. The men folk of our tribe in Acoma protect that system. We make sure that the ladies are the parents of all of us. It sounds kind of funny, but I know back in the early 60s, when a lot of social workers used to come out to the reservation and try and help Acoma families and children especially, they could ask one of the children, who's your mother? And the child would say, well, that's my mother right there. I thought you said that's your sister. Yeah, she's my older sister. That's my mother. Well, where's your mother? Well, oh, that lady right there, she's my mother. She doesn't live with you. No. I thought you said she's your aunt. Well, she's my aunt, but she's my mother. Who's this other lady over here? That other lady? Yeah, she's my mother. What do you mean she's your mother? I thought your mother was at the house. No. She sponsored me when I got initiated. So she's my mother. All these women in all these roles are called the mother. In fact, right now, today, I can go to our tribal council meeting and talk to the tribal councilmen. And you know what I address them as? Mom, mother. Naye. They're our mother. Even our most sacred group of clan of people, the Kasiki, the Antelope clan, they're our parents. They're our mothers. Change to the religious side of our culture. There's 5 men. 3 of them are field chiefs. They pray for us for a year and a half. That's their That's their only job, and doing ceremonies for us. The other two, we call them cooks or preparers, but we address them as Naya, mom, mother. So for us at Acoma, our mothers are very, very important in their role, in their name, in their position, because females have something happens to their body that only the spirit mothers know about, and they beget children. And so our creators, which are females, two sisters, they know that our mothers have that kind of power. So Kiva mothers are very important in directing the way the Pueblo is run and governed. And they have even a role in selecting tribal officials. Like I said, we're a theocracy. They pick the officials. We don't vote for them. The menfolk, well, we protect that system. We make sure that it survives. We make sure that everybody keeps their role and keeps doing what they're doing. We're the enforcers of that system. It may not sound like it's a good system, but the mothers are the ones that carry on the lineage of the people. When I told you my name, I told you, I'm a Zuni Eagle person. Where did that person come from? It came from my mom's lineage. So that's more important than my father. My father was Yellow Corn Clan. So he's a subordinate in my spirit. My mom is the major clan person. So I belong to that Eagle clan, and I'm only a child member of my father's clan. So the ladies themselves are very important in our culture. Most of the Native American cultures, it's seen like that. We have Mother Natures that are our spirits. We address our important positions as mom, as mothers. So like I said, in the 60s, when social workers used to come to Acoma, they would be very confused. Any child, even a grown-up, can have any number of mothers and call any one of them mom. And because of that responsibility, any one of those mothers can take care of those children. So in our families, in our immediate family, my oldest sister is our mother. And when our family, my father and my mother pass away, she becomes our mother. So she's the one that we see for guidance as our older sister. And she gets the responsibility of that. So that's the kind of society, religious group that we live in. And we want to keep that. But that's an oral traditional culture. And that's only carried through the enforcers, which is the males, through the whole family. And of course, we're probably the protectors of that system. And in that system, we try and make sure that we protect one another. And because when we have different kind of religious ceremonies, we get new godparents, I guess you would say it. So we extend our relation, not just between our own biological parents or our biological brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, but when we have a ceremony like a naming ceremony, a coming out ceremony, when we participate in a religious dance sometime, a ceremony for that, we get two new parents, a new mother and a new father. And they're the ones that train us to become better people. So we have extended relationships that way. And it extends the family to reach out to everybody. So at one point, if we're not a very big tribe, we have any number of mothers and fathers out there for us to listen to and to be advised from. And even our government has that same idea within itself too. Mike mentioned a little bit about the number of tribes that are out there. I want to just kind of make a little statement about them. There's about 575 different tribes out there in the United States that the federal government recognizes. And there's probably more than 200 groups that are trying to get recognition. And I say trying to because they are groups of people that want to try and put their people together. They might not have their language anymore. They might not have their customs anymore. They might not have any reservation anymore or any property anymore. But they're trying to put themselves back together and be recognized as a tribe. I used to think maybe that a lot of them want to try and open up a casino somewhere and be able to make money. But most of them really want to try and get their identity back again. And of these like 200 different groups, and there's more, a lot of them want to try and find a way to at least be able to have some sort of way of practicing their religion, practicing their culture, and deciding for their communities how they want to run themselves. Here in New Mexico, we have at least 3 different groups. There's one group down south that's a Tigua group that's in south of a city of Las Cruces, and they're trying to get tribal recognition. They have a story and we have a story. Their story is that when they chased the Spanish out of New Mexico back in the 1680s, they're the ones that chased them all the way down to where is now presently the city of El Paso. And they said they'll wait here and tell us when the Spanish come back. Our story is that they were sympathizers with the Spanish and followed them all the way down to Mexico, but they got afraid because most of the people that were sent to Mexico were sent as slaves to work in the mines down there by the Spanish. So they got afraid and didn't want to go any further into Mexico, so they stayed in El Paso. So we have 2 different versions of the story, but they're there and they want to get recognition as a tribe. I think in Texas, if you look at some of your history, I believe that you do have one pueblo down there south of El Paso, and it's called Isleta del Sur, S-U-R, Isleta del Sur. And that's one of the few tribes that's recognized by the state of Texas. It's interesting history. I've tried to research a lot about how the state of Texas worked with the Native Americans in their state, and they did fight a lot with the French, and the French were easy to give guns and horses to the natives, so the Spanish didn't like the French very much. So a lot of the history that I've read coming from Texas has kind of been interesting. But for New Mexico, we pretty much kind of have just that one group. There's another group that's from Oklahoma. They're Apaches. They're called the Fort Sill Apaches. They're part of the Chiricahua, Geronimo's band. They're originally from the New Mexico, the south central part of New Mexico. But because after Geronimo was defeated in the 1800s, they were shipped all the way to Oklahoma. Geronimo was sent to Florida and died there. But they still feel a tug, they say, to New Mexico, to their ancestral lands. And so they're part of the Chiricahua Apaches, and they want to try and get land back. So they're a little bit in the southeastern part. They have a community there, but they're not recognized by the state or by the federal government. So they want to try and establish their Chiricahua nation there that's part of Geronimo's Apaches. Most of them had been killed or else went further south into Mexico. They might be Yaquis, Tamahararis. They might be other Mexican tribal people now. And then up north, there's a small group of Navajos that want to break away from Big Navajo. They want to incorporate themselves into a small group. And they feel that they can get better services from the federal government if they do that. Now, there's certainly a lot of other groups of people that want to get recognition. One of the big things that have caused a lot of awareness has been this Ancestry.com, this search for genealogy and trying to find out who we are and where we're from. My sister did it, but she didn't get very much information from it, and we don't have a lot of records on our own genealogy. Uh, but anyway, I was at a meeting one time, and the meeting was an educational meeting, and there was a bunch of us Native American guys, mostly from the other pueblos, all talking in the lobby. And this person came up and asked a question. Could I ask you guys, if you're not too busy, a question? And I said, sure, yeah, you can ask a question. So I said, I'll help you out. What do you need to know? He goes, well, I'm Hispanic. I thought I was always Hispanic. Um, and I said, well, that's fine. A lot of history in Hispanic people, or Chicanos here in New Mexico. And he goes, well, I took that ancestry.com thing, and I found out I was like almost more than 30% Native American. And I said, really? Well, that's good. That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all. And he goes, well, I told my friends about it. I said, I'm almost a third Native American. And they told me that, I could probably maybe get free land or free money or free health stuff. And I said, so I'm asking you guys, since you're Native American, where go this free stuff? And maybe even get some money from the casinos. And I said, well, I don't doubt that you're Native American. I really don't. Because if you're Hispanic, then your roots are maybe a lot from Central or South America, which is all Native America had been at one time. And when the Europeans came there, I'm pretty sure there weren't enough to dilute the DNA of all the people that lived in North, Central, and South America. Even when Cortez came, he was not more than 100 people of soldiers and other people. And I kind of feel kind of bad for the Aztecans and the Mayans, because they were taken over by only like a small group of people. Just millions of people, millions of Native Americans taken over by that small group. Of course, smallpox and syphilis and other diseases, that helped a lot. But they quickly took over a lot of Native American communities that way in Central and South America. And a little bit, I think, had to do with the religious philosophy of those Indian people. They had some religious ideas about these newcomers. But anyway, I said, I don't doubt that you're probably Native American, but you have to be part of one of these 575 tribes in order to be recognized. On that, you need to have at least a census number or be counted on the Reorganization Act to be on their census numbers, to be included as one of their citizens of that nation. So I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people that are finding out they have a lot of DNA and in their ancestry searches finding out that they're Native American. When I looked at some of the 2010 census, I found out that the 2010 census had a lot of people that listed themselves as being Native American. And the top 5 that I had asked him about? The top 5. Who do you think they are? And most of the people come up with the same kind of answer, that maybe it's like Oklahoma, Alaska. Yeah, they are part of the top 5. How about California? California has quite a bit. New Mexico has quite a bit. Arizona, quite a bit. But one of the top 5? Texas. I said, whoa, Texas? Where are their big old reservations and their big old powwow groups and their people? Well, I think sometimes in a way, this question coming from this Hispanic about being Native, I think sometimes when they do come into the United States, however they come in, they still have some allegiance to their ancestral people, which is a lot of the times the Native people in Central and South America. And when you come into the United States, I think sometimes rather than when you fill out the census to say you're Hispanic or Chicano or Chicana or even Mexican, that's not maybe what they want to write. So they put down, well, I know I'm a native. I came from a native tribe. You know, I came from the the Tamahorari tribe. I came from a Mexican tribe, and they feel more proud about that than maybe saying I'm a Mexican or San Salvadorian or some other tribe or some other citizenry. So they usually write that down. I think maybe sometimes that's why Texas had so much, even though there's no reservation and no large community of Native people. And so I try and figure those things out sometimes. You know, what's going on? What happened? How did this come about? So I think maybe sometimes in our ancestry searches for ancestry and stuff like that, that kind of makes me kind of take a step back and decide, yeah, these people were probably Native people, and for whatever reasons, their families had lost some of their identity that way, and maybe coming to America maybe makes them want to revitalize that idea about who they are and where they're from and what they're about. So I think maybe that kind of helps out quite a bit with people. Um, let me try and move ahead a little bit. Here, and especially in the United States, Native American people have been trying to establish themselves as being as being, how should I say this, as being able to say they have a right to be here. We have always thought that when Europeans came, we weren't gonna try not to help them do things, and that comes to some ideas like even about Thanksgiving, Columbus Day, and things like that. Uh, we want to make sure that we know that people are aware that we're still around. We're not an extinct group of people, and we want to still be recognized for what we are and what we've done for the country as well. A lot of states have Native American names. A lot of cities, a lot of plants have Native American names. Uh, a lot of languages still carry some of the Native American, I guess, ideas with them. Every time you guys say "okay," look that up, where that phrase came from. Okay, yeah, I think it comes from the Midwest, Kansas tribe, and it means what it says. Okay. We use a lot of Native American things, and a lot of people don't know that. Um, I like to talk to little kids sometimes when they invite me to talk to children, and they often say, "Yeah, he's a real Indian guy, a real Native American man," and I say, "Okay, you guys know a lot of Indian stuff too. You guys know a lot." And I say, "Name some Indian food for me. You guys know a lot of Indian food." And right away, it's like, um, how about rabbits? You guys eat rabbits? Oh yeah, we eat rabbits. How about venison? And so yeah, you're right. We did eat a lot of deer. Then they say, oh, how about corn? You guys ate a lot of, but don't you guys call it maize? I said, well, yeah, we call it maize. And I said, have you guys ever eaten any of these other Native American foods? And don't be surprised if you've never even tried them. But let me tell you about, have you eaten turkey, pumpkin, squash, avocado, pecans, peanuts, potatoes? And all the kids just kind of look at me and say, yeah, we've eaten those. And I said, well, then you've eaten Native American food. A lot of the food that was cultivated in the world now was first cultivated by Native Americans. And so you guys still eat the same kinds of foods that we had eaten in the past, maybe prepared and cooked a little differently, but you guys still do that. You guys still do a lot of Native American things as well. And I said in the very, very beginning, a lot of our American government was based on Native American concepts, Native American ideas about having a representative form of government. That was through the Iroquois League of Nations, about how they established their government. And the writers of the Constitution decided, how can a bunch of savages, I guess, be able to run a government, and we can't. We should see how they run theirs and maybe get some ideas from it. A lot of ideas in terms of environmental protection and environmental ways. And in fact, even in the sciences, how good that we've been able to study the stars and study the movement of the planets, and maybe not necessarily knowing that we were looking at planets, but the sun and even the moon. I mean, in Chaco Canyon, you have a lot of I guess solar observatory petroglyphs out there, and a lot of the buildings and a lot of the architecture relates to astronomy, especially solar astronomy. And then even north in the southern part of Colorado, northern New Mexico, you have Chimney Rock, which is a lunar observatory. And that was maybe about 5-6 years ago proclaimed as a national park. And it's a lunar observatory. And that's just here in New Mexico. We also have those same kind of ruins as observatories up in Chaco Canyon, Ovenweep in Utah, and Mesa Verde in Colorado, southern Colorado. All of those places. I often wonder how a culture can have survived for so long, sometimes with different things happening to it. For, like I said, for Acoma, like for several millennia, without knowing something about things like that, like science and even math, engineering. How can we not have survived without knowing some of that? But of course, we didn't call it that. We're kind of more like a holistic culture that absorbed all of those ideas into maybe our way of thinking, our history, even our religion, how we use some of those. Acoma, whenever you guys come and visit us at Acoma, you'll notice that it's tiered buildings, and they all run east-west, all facing south. And the tiers open up to the south to get most of the sunlight in. And they're all linking one another. So the engineers call that thermal mass. We help heat one another and help cool one another. And we utilize a lot of passive solar engineering to heat our homes, besides having to burn wood and cook. And we just learned that just by looking at the sun, watching the sun. Right now, we're in a time when the sun is heading to its southern home. And when it gets there, I guess the astronomers call its southern home the winter solstice. We just passed one of the equinoxes in September, so we're heading further to the southern home. And we still call them like that, and we still talk about them like that. During the equinoxes, which is, I guess, the English word for that time, we still call it at the time the sun is moving fast south. Mama Shichat, that it's going south fast. And that's how we call it. And usually that time is time for gathering, hunting, preparing for the winter. Because once the sun gets in its summer home or winter home, then it's kind of hard for us. We have to kind of pray a lot. Make sure we last till the sun leaves its summer home and starts heading, or leaves its winter home and starts heading to its summer home. And we still refer to our time of the year like that, and still refer to it to times of when things need to get done. And our religious leaders up at Old Acoma, they're the ones that follow that journey of the sun. And right now, in fact, those kinds of things are sometimes a little bit of what America asks some of the tribes about. There is a petroglyphs up there in Chaco Canyon, and one of them is a petroglyph of what some of the astronomers believe is a solar eclipse, done I think it said about in 1097, and it depicts a corona image of the sun, and they believe that it is a petroglyph of coronal mass ejection, CME, that happened at that time. And the story about that I know about is that a Hopi man had seen it, and they told him, this is what we think it is. We think it is an image of a coronal mass ejection of an eclipse of the sun that happened, that they could see at Chaco Canyon. And he says, well, does it look like that? And they say, yeah, if you ever seen it, you would see the spirals of the energy of the sun coming away from the eclipsed disk of the sun. And the Hopi man then asked, well, what is this one called? What do you guys call this rock? And of course, they told him, Piedra del Sol. And he goes, what? Piedra del Sol, rock of the sun. And the Hopi man is the guy that asked, so did the Hopi see it? I mean, did the Spanish see this? Did the Spanish chip this out of the rock? And the people there in Chaco said, no, I don't think so. So why does it have a Spanish name? Why don't you call it one of the Puebloan names? Why doesn't it have that kind of name? So I think maybe some of those astronomers at that time said, maybe that might be right. Maybe the Pueblo people might have some insight into seeing things like that, or have seen some stuff like that. We still have horizon calendars. We still use horizon calendars. And we still use things like the sun dagger, that spiral that's up there on Fajada Butte at Chaco Canyon. We have sun daggers here at Acoma Canyon, but we don't tell anybody. We still use those kinds of solar I guess reckonings for us. So modern science is looking at maybe trying to have some assistance from Indian tribes like Acoma about trying to name places.
Hey, Joe?
Yes.
Can we open it up to a few questions for you?
Yeah, sure. That'd be all right.
Let's do that. I know we've got a couple that have just come in. We may need to unmute others, but so I've got one from Guadalupe. Okay, and where did you just move it? Here it is. Yes, Guadalupe would like to know, how has your tribe been able to keep your language? And then a second question: if you could recover one thing of your tribe from the past, what would it be? So, how have you managed to hang on to the language, and what would you recover if you could?
Yeah. Well, there's some issues with our language. We have a modern speak, which most people know how to speak, and we have a traditional speak. The traditional speak is usually done in the religious centers, the kivas, and usually done for religious things. We also have another issue with our language is we have gender speak. Females talk differently than males speak. We do have to overcome some of those in order to teach people, especially maybe even our own children, how to talk. Because sometimes then we have to be able to know which language to use, girl speak, man speak, and using just conversational charis versus ceremonial charis. And a lot of our traditional people, the topic was bridging two worlds. I like to see myself as trying to walk a fence, and with you guys now trying to talk to you about Acoma in an English language is more one side of the fence. The other side of the fence is where I would start thinking in Acoma and have to talk in Acoma and know where I'm talking and who I'm talking to, and then be on the other side of the fence, the traditional side of the fence. So sometimes we have to kind of help one another decide what kind of language and when we use it, depending on which side of the fence we're on.
Mhm.
I wish at some point that maybe I would have been always on the traditional side, but then you would never hear me or know of me, and I wouldn't be able to have done the things I've done. So we've got to be careful on how we do that. And right now, most of our revitalization has been in conversational Acoma, and again, having to do different gender speak as well. So we're trying to overcome some of those issues and ideas like that, and trying to use it in our school system. Again, having to write it, what kind of linguistic style or linguistic approach we need to use. There's been several different groups that have tried to show us different ways. So we're still trying to decide that. Yeah.
What would you recover if you could?
I'm afraid we probably can't recover what I want us to. You know, the whole mindset, the whole heart set, because we're never going to be able to go back to the way we were. That's going to never happen. But I think we can come to a happy medium somewhere, that we can have people understand what we're about and who we are, and know that we're able to exist by ourselves. You know, during the end of the 60s in the civil rights movement, a lot of the American Indian movement, religious people, and some of the leaders themselves, those are the most of the guys that I've worked with some of the religious people. Philip Deere, who was a Muskogee Cree from southeastern Oklahoma, he was one of the religious folks for the American Indian movement. I had asked him, what do we want? What do Indian people want? Do we want to have the equal rights with the African Americans and all the other people that aren't European Americans, or what? And he told me one important thing. He said, we don't want equal rights. We want our own rights. We know what we were. We know what we have become. We know where we want to go. And that's what we want to have. And I think maybe if we could go back to a certain time when we could still control all of that, maybe that would have been good for us. But right now we can't do that. So I guess just an awareness of people like who are listening to us here can understand that we're still here, and that's what we want. We want to determine our own destiny on how our tribe wants to go, where it wants to go, and what it wants to do. We think we have had experience doing it.
One of our questions is from Dawn, who would like to know what literature would you recommend to learn about the ways and the customs of Acoma? And just real quick, if anybody wants to go by voice, if you'll flag a hand up and show me your image, I'll call on you also. But back to the other question about what could you recommend for reading?
There's a lot of good different writers that talk about Native American ideas and concepts. The only really, I guess, Acoma person is a poet, Simon Ortiz. Simon Ortiz wrote a lot about how growing up like I did. He's about my age, and he writes a lot of prose and poetry, and I enjoy reading him because I understand where he's coming from when he talks about things like that. And most of you might be able to read him into that too. If you Google, I think it's 20 Native American writers that you must read. He'll be one of them, Simon Ortiz, and he's from Acoma. He's from Acoma here. He does do lectures and stuff as well in literature and kind of like stuff that I'm doing right now. And he's a good one. Yeah. There are others, that are Puebloan that also write prose and short stories and stuff. Leslie Silko is one of them. She's another one. There are other good writers that talk about the Native American ideas, and they're not necessarily Puebloan. Yeah. Okay.
Someone else wants to know if actually a couple of people are asking about roles that women are allowed to play both in leadership and in ceremonies and rituals.
Yes. Because we are a government that copied our government from the Spanish, our main officer for our government has still been a governor, Tapu. And then from him, there's a first lieutenant, second lieutenant governor, teniente. So we copied a little bit of the Spanish form of government. We do have an interpreter and a kutyatip, a secretary, and then we have our mothers and fathers on the council, and they are all male. The Spanish didn't want to talk to any females, but that is our government up front. In our language, Guachan, they're the ones up front. They protect a much older system of government, and those are the Kiva leaders, and the field chiefs, and the cooks that assist the field chiefs. All of those, and they're all in the back, and we never expose them. They don't shake hands. They don't sign bills. They don't go to Washington. They don't kiss babies. They are in the back, and they are our original and true government. Before we are able to do anything, our council and our governor, our leadership, they go to the Kiva and to the field chiefs and ask them their advice. And they pray on it and help them decide and give them some instruction on how to decide issues. But so we have a tiered layer of government. But by far, the ones you see when you punch up Acoma on the internet and you look for administration and council, that's not that's not the true government. They're the figureheads of our government. The true government, you'd have to come and see them. Yeah. And ladies, let me tell you real quick about ladies. Those Kiva leaders and those Kiva advisors are mostly female. The mothers of the Kiva leaders, the Kiva leadership, the clan leadership, they're females. Like I said, I belong to my mother's clan. So the mothers, the ladies, the moms, they're the ones that decide a lot of issues because of their relationship with our traditional government.
The last question we've got on the chat board is from Anthony, who wants to know, he says, at the beginning of your talk, you said that your name means a road that spirits take. Was there a purpose for it being chosen? And did your parents, maybe intend for you originally to be a spiritual leader, or was that name given to you by some other choice of the time?
Yeah, sometimes that might be like a prophecy, maybe for people. But who gives you those names? Your birth names is your grandparents. Your grandparents, or sometimes your parents, depending if your grandparents aren't around. But my grandfather gave me that name. And my grandfather gave me that name because everybody who's born into the world gets a name. And in the morning, you're presented to the sun, Oshak. And at that time, the person who gives you the name introduces you to the sun and tells you from now on, every time you see this baby for the rest of its life, this is who it is. And then as you grow a little older, then they tell you every morning when you greet the sun, you take your cornmeal out and you pray to the sun, you reintroduce yourself. This is who I am, remember? This is who I am, and I met you when I was born. And those names are given. Like my wife's name, it's a white-faced lady dancer. My kids' names, they all have names related to rain or the kind of rain. My granddaughter's name is Hummingbird. The other one is called Snow. It kind of just depends on what your grandparents will see about you and how they should name you. And let me quickly remind most of the folks, this is the first name. Men can have up to 5 or 7 names. I have 3 that I use. And depending on what ceremony you get named at, because you remember you get sponsored or adopted by not foster parents, but new set of parents. You get new mom, new dad. They're the ones that train you and teach you, and they give you a new name too. So sometimes you need to know more than just your one name. But Ei is the name of that path that goes south.
Let's sneak one more in. This will be the last one from someone. William would like to know, he said, you mentioned some of the unfortunate misconceptions and portrayals in popular culture. Are there any particularly positive examples which stick out by their accuracy or their level of respect for the cultures depicted?
I think for the most part, I think the fact that we are looked at as being, one of the groups of people that is a very main environmentalists. We want to protect and make sure our planet is protected, and we hold a lot of reverence to it. When we pray for people, for the love of the people, amohano, for the love of the animals, amu tutayush, and for the love of the land, the air, the water, amu haze, everything. And when we pray for those things, people, animals, and our environment. So we have to include those. Back in the 70s when I was, kind of kicking around the American Indian movement, I was really pissed off about people that weren't understanding me, like me, but think like me. And in that time, I really didn't like praying sometimes, because praying the way I would learn from my parents, my grandparents, my uncles, the Kiva leaders, everybody, it always involved everybody. Why pray for everybody if they don't give a darn about you? If they don't care who you are, what you've done, who you are, why do we pray for them? But, I was told, like my father did, like he told me when I was selected to be a governor or a councilman. I was a councilman for 15 years before I was even a first lieutenant governor. You're Acoma. Simple answer. That's how you pray. That's how you do it. You have no other way of doing it. That's how we have to pray. So even if you don't like how it is now, you still have to do that.
Yeah. I value that question because I had forgotten that response. But when you and I talked some years ago, that was one of the things that I really valued, was that you spoke about the need to pray for all people and all animals. And I thought, well, that's a little bit different than what we're used to hearing. But anyway, Joe, we're going to have to wrap it up. I have included your email address so that those who would like to correspond with you privately can do so. Joe had asked me to do that for everyone. Some people are a little reluctant to post, but speaking of that love for all people, I would like to extend that your way from all of us and say thank you for joining us this evening so much.
Oh, yes. Yes. I would like to maybe just thank you guys for inviting me to come and just say one quick statement. And I'll tell you what I'm saying. Taya matsani wa she'iyat hanu nuta metanu shunish. And another Acoma person or somebody who understands cares will know what I said. But I'm going to tell you, I'm asking our great spirits, the parents that are our mother natures, to bless and pray for us. And why I'm saying that is because we are going to be helping to teach and train the children and the people, the children and the people, that we're going to teach them. So I'm asking the Great Spirit to give us strength and power to do that. And I'll tell you guys all too that to bless all of you in these kind of difficult times, that we can't, do some things that we ordinarily would normally do. And I know for us to worship the way we want to be, out in the open with one another and with all my mothers, all my fathers, all my extended family, that we can do that with one another one of these days. So I'll pray for all, and hopefully our great spirits will take this disease away soon. Thank you.
Again,
Thank
thank you so much.
Thanks. Let's thank everybody once again, Joe, for this wonderful, wonderful lecture. Thanks again. Appreciate. Hopefully, one day we could join us at Galveston. So if you have a chance,
Oh, yeah.
welcome you.
Yes.
And things will get better.
Oh, yes. I hope so. Yes.
And
Thank you
I
very
would-
much.